Please welcome Kaiser Permanente's Chairman and CEO, Bernard J. Tyson.
Right side or the right side? Oh. So I'm like, I know Bernard really well, but I don't know if he has a side. So I'm like, do you have a side? Like, would you like to sit? You know? So, what's your side? Okay. Well, hello. So,
Hello.
you don't need much introduction, but so I'm gonna tell Bernard a story that I've never told him. It's before I begin to ask our first question. So, I became CEO of North America almost 3 years ago, and it was a career transition for me because I was the general counsel of Accenture beforehand, and so I was a lawyer, and lawyers prepare. So one of the things that I said to myself was, as I take on this new role, is that I need to look for role models. I need to look for other CEOs that I can learn from. And I actually met Bernard early on. Kaiser Permanente is a client, and I was incredibly impressed. And because at Accenture we do a lot of prep, I'd read a lot about him, I'd watched a lot of videos and that. And so for the last few years, I've been privileged to get to know Bernard in a lot of different settings now. And you know, Bernard, you are and have been a role model for me for the last 3 years, and I feel really privileged to have you here today so that you can be sharing with everyone so much of what I've learned from you. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so touched. No, thank you. No, thank you.
So I want to tell a story of one of the really impactful moments that we've had, and I have talked to Bernard about this, is we were talking about the community, and I'm going to let Bernard tell the story, but the long and short of it is, Bernard said he had this moment when he decided that I and Kaiser Permanente are going to eradicate homelessness from Oakland. And now, when I am, you know, working with the team at Accenture, we do a lot in the community. That sort of voice is in my ear because it's really inspiring to think about us collectively using, you know, our power to really solve issues. And so, Bernard, I'd love for you to share that story.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here and really great to be with you. I happened to run into Julie last evening, and I said, you know, I'm here for my board meeting, and I am going to hear the feedback from my board this evening about my performance review. And I said, I'm still committed to coming tomorrow, no matter what happens. And you will know whether or not it was a good meeting or not, based on how I respond to your questions today. If things had not gone well, I would have started with, this is a mean world. Let me tell you what equity is all about. You know? I'm still going to do that.
I was just going to say, you're still going to do that.
I'm still going to do that. So everything went well. Yeah. But I have to tell you, one of the board members said, we love you, Bernard, now. Let's see how we feel about you a year from now. That's okay, I get it now. So all is well. So we all do this, right? We have 1,000 things we're doing. We're busy. Life is passing us by. It's energetic. We're all engaged, and we're strapped to our new tools. And so, you know, I had my, sitting in the back of the car, I had my iPad going, my earplugs on, and all this stuff. It's a daily routine when I'm in town. And one morning, my driver turned off the regular street going down 980 and going down the 27th. And he moved over kind of quickly. I looked up, and there was the encampment. And it just dawned on me that I never look up to look at this problem. I'm so busy doing my thing, I move on. And Kaiser Permanente is committed in every community in which we exist, that we're part of the community and the community is part of Kaiser Permanente. And it just dawned on me, like I'm talking to you, that we excluded the homeless from that formula in terms of a focus area and a focus problem that we can do something about, and we have ignored it. We've done some nice things, but we haven't said, is it right for people to be homeless in any community where Kaiser Permanente exists? And our answer is no. That then led to me calling the mayor and saying, what are we doing in Oakland about the homelessness? And she started to explain everything to me. And then I started to call some other resources. And then I engaged my team, and wonderful people started to gather some people. And you know how it goes. You think you could just solve a problem, and it's a simple problem, and then you understand it's more complicated. And I thought, well, all we got to do is find space and rooms and all that. Then I discovered, no, that's a temporary solution. It's a longer term issue. And now I understand it's a bigger issue. It's actually about affordability and housing and all the other things. Then I started asking for statistics about the homeless. I discovered that most of the individuals who are homeless in Oakland, in fact, it's because they lost their jobs or income or something dramatic happened, like a health issue, and they didn't have the money to live. Then a percentage of it is from mental health. There's a segment of seniors that are homeless. And what we do well is we figure out how to solve big problems. And so this is a big problem. So we now have resources allocated to it. We've made commitments to the city of Oakland. One of the things they told me I should do is go to a homeless camp and learn about it. So I went to the camp that got my attention. I had to go change my clothes because I was a little bit too dressed up. And they just said I would not earn the credibility because it looked like what they're used to, people flying in and flying by and flying out. So I changed. I went down there. I spent actually almost a whole day going through all the camps, but in particular at this one. And I talked to the individuals, and I'll never forget the conversations that we had. You know, we're human. You know, I asked them, what else could I do? And they said, well, you're off to a good start. You respect us enough that you come here to ask us, what can you do, as opposed to throwing things at them. We have a medical team that goes in, I think, on a weekly basis to look after any kind of issues that are going on. We're part of the food pantry program. We now work with the community resources. And now we're looking at temporary housing, shelters that we're working on, and we're going to do other things. And our goal is to eliminate homelessness in Oakland, California.
Fantastic. So we're just getting started. So we've talked a lot over the last few years about equality, about gender, race, and how do you actually take action and make change. And so I'd love for you to first start by sharing your thoughts on mentorship and sponsorship, because I know that you have a very strong view on that.
You know, I've been very fortunate throughout my career that I've always had a mentor and different people throughout my career. And I've been fortunate to understand by benefiting from a sponsor, and that a mentor and a sponsor are two different individuals, or it could be the same individual, but it's two different objectives. A mentor is someone who helps you, the person, right? It helps you to reflect, helps you to think about what you're doing well, what you're not doing well. A mentor helps you to see yourself. And for me, at least when I'm mentoring people, I try to help them to pass what I call the realistic test. And the realistic test is we go out and we put on this imagery and this role, and we all do it. And people draw assumptions about who you are. And sometimes they define who you are by what you do. But then the sort of like the realism test is when you go home at night, you have to look yourself in the mirror and answer the question, am I really being who I am? And I would offer that's the most important test of all. Am I being authentic to myself versus I'm pretending for the world to draw conclusions about me? A sponsor um, represents. A sponsor is a person that's in the room that you're not in, and they're representing you to get into that room or in another room. I have people that I sponsor, and I'm clear that I'm sponsoring Julie, as an example. So if I see an opportunity for Julie, I'm going to speak up that I think Julie is the best person for this job. And a sponsor, especially a sponsor in power, can move a lot of people through the process. Now, some people would argue that that's not fair, that's not equality, that's not, all the stuff we hear. Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, you got to have a very objective process. And then I've heard people say that throughout my career, you have to have a very objective process. And the goal is to do that. But in most cases, after you've done your very objective interview, it really boils down to how did you like the person? Well, how did you feel about him or her? And what I've learned over the years, whoever's in the room and sitting at the seat, they get to set that agenda for defining what that is and what that's about. And a sponsor will sit in that room and defend the person who is clearly qualified, clearly capable of doing the job, and or in a couple of cases for me, a very high potential person who may not have every single part of the skills that's needed, but has enough to qualify and the capacity to grow. And in most of our jobs today, the capacity to learn and grow is the skill set that's most needed because the world is changing so fast around us. This thing that you can look at somebody's 10 years worth of experience or 20 years and think that they might be more qualified than someone who's coming fresh out of college, don't have baggage, and you're going to ask them to innovate. I would argue I would hire that person any day of the week before I take somebody who's been there 20 or 30 or 40 years doing something and say, come in and innovate. They're going to come in thinking they know everything. And that may not be needed for the new world that we're going in. So I would encourage everybody in this room to both have mentors and sponsors and to mentor and sponsor individuals.
Thanks. So Bernard, you've had a lot of firsts in your life, where you've been the first one, the first African American, and we were talking about some of the challenges as a leader to think about when you're diversifying your team, and some of the things that you may not realize as a leader you've sort of done, and now you're bringing someone in and you think they're going to be successful. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and you probably get this too. You've been the first. You're the first. Are you the first woman for the center, or did they have somebody before? You the first.
Someone before.
And then, but you.
Yeah. I've been the first for.
But you've been, people are, you're first. You're first. And they really make it sound like something. What is it like being the first African American CEO of Kaiser Permanente? Well, it's great. I mean, what kind of question is that? Like, yeah. First, second, third, I'll take it. That's not the question. Yeah. But what was the question?
The question is what we were talking about earlier, is what it's like as a leader. And you say, wow, I'm bringing someone in. I'm diversifying my team.
So when you
what you have to think about as a leader when you're bringing people in and you may not have realized sort of the dynamics in your team.
Yeah. Well, team dynamic is a very interesting thing. I I wish you can see my team. I have some of the brightest men and women I would offer that's working in healthcare on my team. They're very different. They're very different. Um, I have a rule that I am very explicit about with my team about uh, this is how we roll, as I call it. This is how we roll at Kaiser Permanente. I talk about, look, uh, you're not uh, there to warm the seat. You're smart, you're bright, you're different. So this thing about, see, I have um, a whole career of going into the room as the first or the minority or the different one. And I used to try to go in the room and figure out how the room is working so I could at least pretend that I'm a part of it. Then I finally accepted that, there's a cultural divide here. And I'm not going to play by that rule. I'm going to go in the room and be who I am. And then we're going to see where the chips fall. Because the room has already defined the rules of the road. The question is, do I simply fall in line or do I bring my unique self into that room? So I grew up in certain communities. My life experience is different from a lot of people in this room, in the room that I'm in. How I view the world is differently. And guess what? That might afford me an opportunity to bring a different perspective to the issues at hand. And I worked hard to be a contributor, but not to go along to get along. And obviously, that at times has caused problems and challenges, and at other times, things have worked fairly well. In my room now, everyone understands what I call the freedom of speech. You have the duty to speak up. If you don't have anything to say, you don't have to speak up. So it's not the duty just to talk for the sake of talking. You have the duty to speak up. You have the duty to listen. And you have the duty that once a decision is made that you line up and we make the decision happen. And that has gone a long ways in allowing people to speak their truth to power. I encourage people to disagree with me, and I get that a lot. And we end up with better answers. Some of my executives will simply just take me on. Others will go around a little bit with the verbal, and then they land on a position. I'll look at them and go, are you disagreeing with me? To better understand it. But it gives them a chance to do that. So I think the whole point is the whole point of having a team is to bring great thinking together to solve complex problems, to figure out how to create synergy and to move stuff along. And then our job is to take advantage of that and to celebrate that and to make sure that people feel good when they go home at night that, guess what, I get to go and be who I am at Kaiser Permanente and make my contributions and fight and champion what I believe in and to be respected. And then I come home every night and I'm tired, but I'm ready to go tomorrow. And for me, that's the sign that we are maximizing the potentials of individuals.
Great. Well, my last question I want to make sure to ask because it's so unique to have you here, and you have a very clear vision of where healthcare needs to go and what it really means to be innovative in healthcare. And so I want to make sure that we have an audience that many are at some of the best and most innovative companies in other industries as well. So if you could share that as our last question, because I think it's really important that we all hear it.
So I'm proud of what we've done in the history of medicine, where people used to live until they were, 40 or so years old, and then they died. And then two things happened. we figured out how to deal with sanitation and food, and people started living longer. But as they were living longer, they started to pick up on diseases that today we call chronic illnesses. We built a healthcare system, starting with a hospital. We built a healthcare system that worked on fixing people when they were sick. Now we're in the 21st century. And at Kaiser Permanente, we're saying, what diseases are we working on today that in fact we should be curing and or they should never exist? And the healthcare system of the future is really about maximizing wellness and healthy life years and helping people to cope early on with illnesses and diseases that creates a better value proposition and a better life. And we now know with the combination of brain power of doctors, nurses, and others, technology that allows us to monitor and connect to you in very different ways than we ever had before. And the evolution of genomics and precision medicine and biotech, et cetera, that there are certain diseases that in fact we can work on so we can eradicate them from Earth. And that's what we believe is the future of how we need to think about health. There are certain cancers that nobody should have. And the question is, how do we now create a health system in this country that will address that? There are many people walking around with diabetes that should not have diabetes. But it means that healthcare cannot just stay in this lane of healthcare. It now must be a part of a whole health ecosystem that looks at foods and exercise and sensories and take on the tough issues. Not the issue of guns, but the issue of the effect of guns in our neighborhoods and in our schools and in our churches, et cetera. And so the health system that we're working on now is a system that is so focused on the health and well-being of the individuals that we're saying we should be figuring out how to create more life years of health for an individual to thrive, as opposed to continuing to fix and work on a health system in this country that is about fixing people when they get sick. There will always be a need for episodic health care, but a health system should be a partnership with you for your health and your well-being. That's what we're working on at Kaiser Permanente.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bernard Tyson. Thank you.
Thank you.